Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Hello, dear friends, and welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show, where we share innovative thoughts and explore deepening truth in support of the path to unity and enlightenment. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour, we'll be looking at superpowers, collective consciousness, and evolution. It's difficult to look at the current global condition and not sink into despair. Between overpopulation, the resulting pollution, and dwindling resources, we've created massive problems. There would appear to be no way out, short of some sort of disaster gleaning the herd. But what if perceived overpopulation is instead the stage before unity, evolution, and enlightenment? What if each person alive today, and possibly those that are not, has a unique opportunity to participate in an emergence of collective consciousness? What if we're coming into a time of human superpowers, where solutions to this seemingly impossible situation are easily found? With us this hour to delve into the topic of superpowers and collective consciousness as they relate to evolution is Dean Radin. Dean is the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, an associated distinguished professor of integral and transpersonal psychology at the California Institute of Integral Studies. He earned an MS in electrical engineering and a PhD in psychology from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, before joining research staff at IONS. He has held appointments at AT&T Bell Labs, Princeton University, University of Edinburgh, and SRI International. He is author and co-author of hundreds of technical and popular articles, 46 book chapters, and 4 popular books: The Conscious Universe, Entangled Minds, Supernormal, and Real Magic. His website, deanradin.com. Dean, thanks for joining us on Mission Evolution.
It's my pleasure.
So, you're the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. What is that institute and what does it mean?
Well, our name is actually Noetic.
Thank you.
The word is a Greek word, nous, N-O-U-S, which means to know. And so we study ways of knowing, which involves rational and analytical ways, but also intuitive, psychic, mystical, and all of the other non-rational ways of knowing. So what we tend to focus on are experiences that are not yet well accounted for by the neurosciences, and those are primarily psychic experiences. So we use all of the tools and techniques of science, but we focus on psychic experience.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, it's pretty esoteric, if you will. How are you able to study it or to pinpoint it?
Well, fortunately, when it comes to experiences, science is very powerful in terms of what it can study. So just to give an example of if somebody says that they had a precognitive dream, a dream of something that later turned out to be the case and during the day, well, that can be studied in the laboratory under controlled conditions, both in the dream state and in the waking state. And the key to this is that it's under controlled conditions, because lots of people have spontaneous psychic events that happen in their lives, but you don't know how to judge the meaning of those experiences or whether they're real or whether they're a mistake or a delusion or whatever. But when you do this under a controlled condition in the lab where you set up the conditions beforehand, you can tell the difference. If it's a genuine precognition, a real telepathy, real clairvoyance, and so on. So that's the advantage of doing experiments in the lab, where you're able to tell, in principle, is the experience what it appears to be, a real psychic event, or is it some other mundane explanation?
So as a scientist, how did you become interested in psychic phenomena and magic in the first place?
Well, I didn't know that I was interested in magic other than as fiction until about 2 years ago when I started writing my latest book, Real Magic. But the psychic phenomena part came about as a result of reading lots of fairy tales and science fiction when I was a kid. Within the science fiction genre, starting in about the 1950s, the idea of psychic abilities and machines and technologies based on psychic phenomena became very popular. So there's a whole rash of studies in science fiction that then merged into horror stories, and now we see it everywhere in the entertainment business. There's psychic things happening constantly in fiction. Uh, People a little younger than me, of course, would have been enthralled by Harry Potter and other fiction like that. And so my interests are no different than the hundreds of millions of other people who are thoroughly enthralled with the idea of psychic and mystical powers. So the only difference is that I'm a scientist and I've spent the majority of my career studying these phenomena. And that's a little unusual because there's only about 40 to 50 scientists in the world who have been doing this at any given time, which is quite odd when you think about it, because if you have hundreds of millions of people who are really fascinated by it, normally you would have lots of people in the academic world who are studying it, but that turns out not to be the case.
Why do you suppose that is? That is odd.
Well, there's a taboo about these phenomena. The taboo is seen very clearly in the esoteric literature, which is one of the reasons why I started to study it, to find out why these phenomena are reported so frequently and are the basis of a lot of our entertainment, but they're more or less excluded from academic study. So one reason is fear, that people kind of like the ideas of psychic phenomena and magic, but they also don't like them very much as real. As fiction, it's okay, but as real, it tends to freak people out. Partially because of the notion that we want the sovereignty of our own mind. We walk around as we think independent creatures, and we don't like anybody getting inside our head. So that's frightening to many people. The other reason, especially in the academic world, is that science sees reality within a certain set of assumptions. That's called the scientific worldview. Within that set of assumptions, psychic phenomena are impossible to describe. They don't fit. In which case, some scientists will go as far as saying that ESP, extrasensory perception, is literally impossible. It cannot exist. And therefore, anyone who presents any evidence that it does, or even any anecdote that it does, they have to be mistaken, or they made a flaw, or they're lying. That's the only possible explanation. So that's
and yet
the
you're
story.
coming up,
Yes?
You're coming up with scientific proof that it does exist.
Right. So here we have a bit of a problem. So on the one hand, you have scientists and oftentimes spokespeople for science saying this is impossible. And on the other hand, you have evidence showing that, well, it's clearly not impossible because we can see it in the laboratory. So it sets up a controversy, and academics don't like controversy. And in a simple way, that's why you don't find this very often in the academic world, because it's controversial.
Well, you speak of extraordinary psychic abilities, or what you call superpowers. What are those exactly?
In a sense, every psychic ability, even elementary ones, are already magical phenomena, primarily because we don't have an explanation yet that all scientists can agree to. So something as simple as telepathy or clairvoyance or precognition or forms of mind-matter interaction, all of those are already extraordinary experiences from a scientific perspective. From a ordinary perspective, meaning an everyday perspective, they're not extraordinary at all. In fact, we did a survey recently to ask people of 25 different kinds of psychic ability, the way that these phenomena tend to manifest in different ways. Of the 25, how many of them have you ever had experienced personally? So we asked the general public. We also asked scientists and engineers to find out whether are these the same, are they different. So among the general public, 94% of people said that they had experienced at least one of 25 different kinds of psychic phenomena, and on average, 13. So this is not unusual. A lot of people have had lots of experiences of this type. So then we asked the scientists and engineers the same question. So what percentage of scientists and engineers would you say had experienced at least one of 25? What's your guess?
Me? Oh, gosh. I would say probably 85, 90%.
Very good. It was 93%. What that tells us is that while scientists and engineers don't talk about this very much, they have the same level of experience as people who are not scientists and engineers, which is not surprising because they're all human. So we're talking about a very common type of human experience that, for historical reasons, is just not allowable within the academic system. So I think eventually it will be. We just happen to be in a strange point in history where some things are not allowed to be studied.
Well, this is really fascinating. We're going to have to take a quick pause, but I'm interested in talking about how that denial affects us and our abilities. So on the other side of this pause, Dean and I will be back to discuss this. You're listening to Mission Evolution Radio Show, coming to you on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back. This is Mission Evolution Radio, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. Remember, past episodes are available on our website, missionevolution.org. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka, and our special guest this hour is Dean Radin. His website, deanradin.com. Dean, before the break, we were just talking about how many of your average people, including scientists, doctors, lawyers, whoever else, actually have a large number of psychic experiences, but that it's just not accepted and therefore it's not talked about. Now, what effect does that have in that we all have this ability and yet it's not being trained, we don't have any etiquette around it because we're in denial of it? What ramifications are happening there?
Well, one simple implication of it is that we are not using a resource which we could be using. So the resource here is we're constantly faced with making difficult decisions, oftentimes without enough information to be able to make it rationally. So we have to guess in making decisions. Well, wouldn't it be useful to have people who are extremely intuitive and maybe even precognitive who can help us make decisions? So that's one area. Another is that there's a whole branch of people who are extremely adept at psychic healing, that they through their mind can help heal other people. Well, that's far outside the medical mainstream, but it works. So that's another resource that we're not using. Yet another, which was used for 20 years in the U.S. government, was through espionage. So one of the reasons why espionage, it doesn't sound very nice, but it turns out that of all of the ways of reducing problems in the world, if one side of a conflict actually does know what's happening on the other side, then they're less likely to make a mistake. Because oftentimes conflicts occur because one side doesn't know what the other's doing, and so they will attack each other out of fear. But if they know what's actually going on, then everything settles down. So there are a lot of people out there who are extremely adept at clairvoyance. Well, they could be used for that as well. So that's just a couple of examples of cases where if people with these talents were found and cultivated and honored for their ability, just like we do for expert musicians and expert athletes, the world would probably be a better place.
You know, also athletes and musicians and scientists all have very reliable, tried and true training, and it's regulated. In the psychic phenomena, there isn't any. So, you know, how do you tell if somebody's good, or even if they have a gift but it's a wild card? I mean, it kind of leaves us guessing, doesn't it?
It does. And so it's not that different than working with a doctor, because while doctors are licensed, their abilities range a lot from one person to the next. So you do the same with psychics and mediums. You ask around and you get recommendations from your friends, and that's about the best that we have right now. But it's true that in terms of formal training, there is no formalized certification method that's highly regarded or distributed around the world. So you buyer beware.
Yeah, it also leaves the people with the gift kind of hanging, right?
Right. But usually, in my experience, the ones who are really good don't have to advertise. And the fact they don't advertise, because through word of mouth, they get as many clients as they wish.
Right. No, what I was talking about is if a person has a gift, but they have no place that they can get formal training, they're just kind of left on their own to develop it.
Right. But it's not that difficult to find books and training programs and so on that are out there to learn more from a scientific perspective or from a practice perspective, all of these phenomena. I mean, especially now on the internet, you have access to virtually every book ever written, including all of the books that used to be completely secret. They're all available now that you can buy, or you can even download some for free or go to a library. You have the world's entire library at your fingertips. So for somebody who's motivated, they can certainly find out things. And there are plenty of places that are teaching. There's a lot of people teaching remote viewing, for example. Again, there's no standardized method. There's no equivalent of Harvard University that you can go to where you can learn these things. So you have to be careful, but nevertheless, it's not as though we're living in a time where these kinds of phenomena were only transferred through an oral tradition, for example. There are lots of places
Right.
where you can find out information.
In my experience, a lot of the information that does come through some of these gifts is in metaphorical form. And so people have to also learn to translate metaphor and allegory. Has that been your experience in your studies?
Well, for the legendary parts, the lore, absolutely. It's mostly allegory. And even if it isn't allegory, it's written in language from different times and different cultures. And so when those stories are translated into modern English, something is left out. So this is one of the values of looking at the historical record, especially in the esoteric lore or the esoteric traditions. And there are lots of interesting books, including the one I just finished, my latest book, Real Magic, gives a quick tour of history in terms of Western esoteric ideas. And by doing that, you can see that there's certain threads that you see again and again, different cultures, different times, going all the way back thousands of years to up to the present day. And when you can see it in historical perspective, then the fact that there's different nuances and different languages and different cultures, it doesn't matter so much because you can see that there's a synthesis that is basically the same that has been around since shamanism. So we're talking about at least 10,000 years. And it's the same general idea that just keeps repeating it again and again.
Yeah, you see it enough times, there has to be something to it, right?
Well, or at least that that people haven't changed that much, probably in a few 100,000 years. So we tend to think of our ancestors 10,000 years ago as being not very smart and not educated and so on because they didn't have the structure we had today. But they're every bit as smart as we are today. They just were living in a different time. They interpreted things in different ways. But so the fascinating part is that their experience of psychic phenomena and experience of mystical states was essentially the same as we have today. And that's very interesting because it means this is a very long-term human-centric kind of phenomenon that has repeated throughout human history. So if somebody has a mystical or even a psychic experience today, it's very likely to be almost the same kind of thing because it's before language, it's pure experience, as somebody 10,000 years ago might have experienced.
Fascinating. So do you think everyone has the potential to develop psychic abilities?
I think everyone has psychic abilities whether they realize it or not, because it's not an ability like you learn to play tennis. It's much more like an ability that you are aware. Well, you don't think of awareness as being an ability, and nevertheless, if you do meditation, you find that there are many, many layers and nuances to the idea of attention and awareness. So if you are sentient, you have awareness of any type, then you have the capacity to be psychic because they're not that different. If you practice at it and become more and more aware at greater depth through meditation and other methods, then your psychic ability will be improved as well.
Or do you think we're entering a time in history that enhances psychic abilities?
I don't think so, no. I think that psychic ability was probably much more prevalent in times when we weren't so distracted. Our ability to be distracted now is brought to a high art through constant exposure to media, through our cell phones and smartphones. And this is one of the reasons, by the way, that mindfulness meditation training is becoming so popular, that people have almost forgotten at this point what it is like to sit down and be quiet and just attend to what's happening in your mind, rather than being pushed constantly by the world, the external world, which is a distraction. So if you are being constantly distracted, you can't attend to what's happening in your mind. And if you can't attend to that, then you're not going to be very psychic.
Do you think that the mental process gets in the way of psychic ability?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we know that the everyday conscious awareness, which is what people are walking around with most of the time, that is the worst state to be in, to be psychically aware. And you see this because you start looking at states of consciousness where psychic ability is stronger, not only anecdotally, but also in the laboratory. You find that it's in dreams, it's while taking psychedelic drugs, while meditating, while engaging in drumming, dancing, and so on. Almost anything that pulls you out of your ordinary state of awareness will improve psychic ability. And that tells us...
So you're talking about measuring brain waves, and you can scientifically document where you are. Yes.
Some of it is brain waves, but it's more just what you ask somebody to report what state are they in. Well, dreaming we can tell physiologically, but if somebody is in a meditative state, you can tell that somewhat through their brain activity. But you can also just ask them, are you meditating, or did you just meditate for 5 minutes? And people know. So that's how we can tell what state somebody is in.
So you just go ahead and ask the person. Go figure, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to take another quick pause, on the other side of which I'd like to talk about these states and how we can achieve them and what we can achieve through them. But it is time for that short pause. Dean and I will return to our discussion on the other side of this break, so you stay right there. This is the Mission Evolution Radio Show on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
From our broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond, you're watching the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Den.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world, interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
Welcome back. This is Mission Evolution Radio Show, www.missionevolution.org, bringing the latest tools and information to support the path to enlightenment. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Dean Radin. His website is deanradin.com. Dean, we have touched in on how we can start applying this ancient skill that we've had of having non-ordinary experiences. What do you think is going to be the most useful application for the individual?
Well, most individuals are interested in pragmatic things in their life. They want to improve their station in life. But many of us also, especially the older we get, or if we've encountered instances of mortality, we're interested in the bigger questions of who am I? How did I get here? Where am I going? Those kinds of questions. So anything which begins to inform us on our true nature is valuable in that sense. So psychic phenomena are a way of presenting to us a more comprehensive way of thinking about who we are. And so from a Western secular perspective, which is the training that many people have, we are machines made out of meat. That's the scientific worldview. This is a nihilistic worldview in the sense that it basically says that you're a machine. There's no inherent purpose to you. There's no virtue other than anything that we come up with ourselves. And it creates a purposeless and meaningless universe. That's what being called a machine made of meat means. Mm-hmm. This is what you're taught in the scientific curriculum. And I see the effect of this in college students who, somewhere around their junior year in a science curriculum, they start to get depressed because you hear again and again in many different ways that the universe is pointless. It's just an accident. There's no meaning to anything. Well, maybe that's true and maybe it's not true. So people who have psychic experience and start exploring the nature of their own consciousness, what they very quickly begin to learn is that there's this very long tradition, thousands of years long, the esoteric traditions, which give a very different picture about the nature of reality and your role in it, whereas science is only about 400 years old. So we have a very, very long, thousands of years long tradition that tells us one story, and we have a science tradition of a couple hundred years that tells us a completely different story. So the reason why we pay attention to science is because the doctrine that it is based on, which is called materialism, has been extremely effective in developing technologies. So we wouldn't be able to do this broadcast without the technologies that science and materialism have given us. So it's undeniable that something about that is correct. But materialism does not account very well for your internal sense of being a person. The thing inside yourself that you call me is awareness. And so science does not know what to do with that at all. And in fact, some scientists will then say that your internal sense of awareness is an illusion. It's just something that your brain is creating, and it's also meaningless. It just is a side effect. Many other scientists are now questioning that approach and saying that is not exactly right. So when you look at other traditions that are telling us something about consciousness, rather than saying that consciousness is just an effect of the brain, they're saying, no, you got that backwards. Consciousness is actually fundamental. It's simply it's a key element of the fabric of reality itself.
So this brings us to my next question. What is collective consciousness?
Well, before we even get to collective consciousness, it's just about your own consciousness. What is that thing? So the esoteric traditions say that consciousness is fundamental. That means that it's simply there. It's part of the universe. It permeates everything all the time. But now there's a distinction between what I call consciousness with a little c, which is what you personally experience, which is part of consciousness with a big C. So that's universal consciousness. So collective consciousness you can think of as somewhere in between. So there's 7+ billion people on Earth, and their collective little c consciousnesses build up into an average of a much bigger consciousness. And all of the esoteric traditions and most religious traditions as well, you find again and again the same story, namely that the consciousness in you is identical to the consciousness that's universal. Like in Hinduism, the idea is expressed as Atman equals Brahman. That means your awareness and the universal awareness is the same thing. You find it in the Bible, you find it in the Quran, you find it everywhere. And the reason is because this is what mystics have said throughout history, that there's no difference really between the thing you call me inside your head, your spark of experience, and a universal awareness.
So do you think developing these esoteric gifts will help us connect from our individual consciousness to the universal consciousness?
It's not so much that you would connect to it, but you would realize that it's the same thing, and it has always been the same thing. So from a perspective, like an everyday perspective, most people don't walk around being mystics. They don't feel that they're the same as the universe. But with the right spark of experience, sometimes as dramatic as a near-death experience, sometimes less dramatic, like a moment of meditation. Other people have had these experiences just walking on the beach and marveling at the sunset. Something can trigger this realization that you and the universe are essentially the same thing. So
and what does that do to our experience? There's a
wide variety of ways of experiencing that.
What does that do to our experience or our worldview once we've made that connection?
Well, interestingly, it creates a transformative experience. Just like near-death experiences will shift a person's personality. A single experience, it might take 30 seconds, will change a person from a depressed, cynical, skeptical creature into somebody who's very positive, has a much more expansive sense of themselves, and is now concerned about the welfare of others. And this can, as I said, it can happen in 30 seconds, and it's a permanent transformation. So it can have a very dramatic effect on somebody's life.
As we're getting ready to move into this new era where there's so many people on the planet, globally, what kind of an effect would it be if more of us become aware of that, of the collective?
Well, it'll probably have a very beneficial effect, except that there's an enormous amount of pressure to not have that happen. That the civilization, like most other large-scale systems, have an enormous amount of status quo in it. People in power do not want that to change.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
One of the reasons why psychic phenomena and special abilities and so on are suppressed is because they challenge existing power. And existing power doesn't want to give up its power, and so they will do everything that it possibly can to say, no, this psychic stuff doesn't exist, and consciousness is not really that important, and on and on and on. So there's a lot of pressure that's pushing it aside.
Well, if a lot of us can connect with our psychic ability and therefore with a larger truth, collectively, if you will, that's going to start pointing out the lies that we've been controlled by, like, false news, media, et cetera, what kind of impact is that going to be?
Well, studies have shown that roughly 10% of the population can change civilization. You get 10% of people and they do something and everyone else will follow. In this case, if you had 10% of the population felt strongly about opening up our understanding of consciousness, it would eventually change civilization. Exactly how it changes it, we don't know. I think it would be good, but as I said, we don't actually know at this point.
It's going to be fascinating, isn't it? Because I think it's inevitable, don't you?
Well, it may be part of evolution, yes. It may be something that we're passing through a point in history where we happen to think this way. But things change. We've gone through many different periods of civilization where people believed in many different things. We could be going through that again now.
Pretty fascinating. And we have history of when the esoteric practices were commonplace. So we have something to draw on. It's not like we're shooting in the dark completely.
We have 10,000 years of esoteric history. So the names that we're talking about here are everything from shamanism, as I said, to Pythagoras, to Plato, to Neoplatonism, Hermeticism, Gnosticism, the Kabbalah, Rosicrucians, Freemasons, Theosophy, New Thought Church, Mind Science Church, Christian Science Church, and now the whole book genre of affirmations and law of attraction. They're all part of this 10 or 20,000 year long esoteric history. And the reason it's called esoteric is very simply that it is hidden. That's what esoteric means, hidden. And by the same token, occult also means hidden. It has gained a negative connotation for the same reason that the esoteric has. It's because power structures never liked this information. So it called it heretical or demonic even. And it's not. It's just a different worldview. It's a different way of understanding who and what we are.
It's very fascinating. All that against 200 years of science, right? We're going to have to take another break. Dean and I will be back shortly, so don't you dare go away. You're listening to Mission Evolution Radio Show on the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howe will expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multifamily dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
Welcome back. This is Mission Evolution Radio Show, www.missionevolution.org, bringing the latest developments to an evolving world. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. I always love suggestions from my listeners. You can always email me at info@missionevolution.org to propose a topic or guest that's on your mind. I'm sure we'll all enjoy them. Our special guest this hour is Dean Radin. His website, deanradin.com. Dean, we were just getting into how the esoteric practices have been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and science has been around for a couple hundred. How do you think we're going to reconcile this?
Well, the nice thing about science is that it is not locked into dogma. At least it's not supposed to be locked into dogma. And the history of science shows that at least every 5 years, sometimes every 2 years, our textbooks are revised, which shows that it's an expansive system. It allows itself to be driven by new observations and new experiments. So that suggests to me that eventually, since we're talking about real phenomena, consciousness and psychic phenomena are real things, that eventually science will catch up to it and start to understand it and explain it. And by the same token, what we used to call magic will also start to be understood. At that point, when we have a mature science that understands magic, for example, the world will look very different than the way it looks today. It's difficult to predict exactly how it's going to look different, but there will be many elements of it that will change, and as a result, the average person's concept about reality will also change. It maybe we're 10 years away from that, or maybe we're 100 years. It's hard to tell.
Are you of the mind that we are creating our reality by our belief systems?
I think we are. Certainly from a psychological perspective, we know that your attitude depends a lot on how you experience everyday life. So that's just from a mundane perspective. But all of the evidence that I know of from studies with psychic phenomena also strongly suggests that our beliefs and imagination and expectation are shaping the nature of reality itself. And this, of course, is a very unpopular idea within science today, but nevertheless, that's what the experiments are beginning to show. That not to a huge extent are we manipulating reality, but that it happens at all is already an astonishing thing. And there's plenty of evidence that I think we do have the capacity to push the nature of reality around. So the short answer to your question is, yeah, we are in some degree participating in the way that reality presents itself.
And is that manipulation happening a lot through the esoteric arts, or can it?
Well, I tend not to make a separation between esoteric ideas and everyday life because it's not really separate. Our manipulation of reality is happening all the time. Every time you have a whim or a wish or an expectation, that is already pushing the world around. The only difference between somebody who's working on esoteric magic or using a psychic ability is that they're consciously trying to do it. They're doing a practice that is designed to do that very thing, but it's nothing special. And the reason I can say this is because most of the studies looking at psychic phenomena in the laboratory are done with people who don't make any special claims. They may never have had a psychic experience in their life that they remember, but in the laboratory they can still demonstrate it. And that tells us that what is going on here is not at the conscious level. It's below the level of consciousness, conscious awareness, and in which case it's happening all the time.
So what if we bring it conscious and work it collectively?
Well, now you have the possibility of something more interesting happening. The thing about collective ability here is that we're not dealing with something which is a linear increase. In other words, if you have one person who can do something, if you get 10 people together, you're not going to get something 10 times bigger. And that's because the nature of these phenomena seem to work more like waves than like particles. That is, that waves can interfere with each other. And so if you have one person thinking this and another person thinking the anti this, they cancel each other out. So if you can get 10 people who are metaphorically on the same wavelength, exactly, then you can get an increase. But if you have 9 people thinking along one train of thought, and then the 10th person is thinking, no, this is stupid, that can destroy the entire thing. So it's very difficult to get more than 2 people together who are really thinking exactly along the same wavelength. And if now you're thinking about 1,000,000 people, 1,000,000 people praying for peace, for example, it would be very interesting to survey each of the 1,000,000 people and ask them, what do they think peace means? The likelihood is that there's at least hundreds of thousands of different concepts that people have in mind when they're thinking about peace, and that just creates a big mishmash and would basically flatten out any response at all.
Fascinating. So we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot by our diverse realities.
A lot depends on how clear you are. So your intention is important. Where you place your attention is also important, but it has to be exceptionally clear. And this is not for esoteric reasons. It's that just in the same sense that life coaches and therapists will always tell you that you need to have very clear goals in mind. Otherwise, you never know whether you reach it or not. So the same is true in this domain. If you want to change the world in some way, you have to be absolutely clear on what that means, what it would look like, how it's going to be achieved. And most people are usually not so clear on their goals. And that's why things are kind of mushy. It doesn't happen if you don't know where you're going.
Do you think there's any possibility that collective consciousness and superpowers can solve the environmental mess we find ourselves in?
I do, actually. In the preface to my latest book, Real Magic, I present a scenario where the climate is spiraling out of control. And yet this is now a science fiction story in a civilization more advanced from ours, where people recognize that consciousness does have the ability to manipulate the physical world. And in that civilization, they simply assign to these talented people to fix it. And they do. So, yeah, if you have people who are talented and they have a very clear idea about what they're going to do, then the answer is yes. I think we can not only fix the climate, we can fix anything that we wish.
This is really hopeful, because I know a lot of people are kind of, despairing right now.
Yeah, and a lot of the despair is because we don't have a sense that any one of us, or even collectives of us, can do anything. But what all of these phenomena tell us is that every time you think a thought and have a whim or have a wish about something, that is contributing in a positive sense. You just have to keep in mind, though, that there are also lots of other people there who have exactly the opposite thoughts. This is one of the reasons we see such angst in politics. You have people who just scream at each other. That's not going to accomplish very much. So part of the puzzle here then is to figure out a way of not continually inflaming people's emotions and fears, which is what today's media and social media is doing very effectively. It just keeps us in a churning state where we can't move ahead in a positive direction. But as I said before, if you get 10% of the population to agree on something, you can move mountains. You can reshape reality. So a lot of it comes down to programs like yours, where you try to reach as many people as you can and give them hope that with the right kind of collective agreement, yeah, all kinds of interesting things can happen.
What influence will the evolution of the collective consciousness and superpowers have on our perception of reality?
Well, that's an interesting question. Perception of reality and understanding of reality are slightly different. So it'll certainly have a difference in terms of our understanding of reality. Rather than being in a pointless universe, we may well end up with a model that says, no, the universe is highly purposeful. You have a place and a role to play in the universe. I think that is one of the directions we'll go. But in terms of perception, your perception of reality, I'm going to have to think about that, because that's a question I haven't been asked very often.
Yeah, it's because if our perception of reality is different, it's hard to be on the same purpose, hard to direct our intention, isn't it?
Well, no, not necessarily, because a mystic's perception of reality is that reality is simply one giant universal mind.
Okay.
It's like completely perfect. It's like a crystal that is absolutely perfect. Everything is perfect. That's one form of a perception. There are other people who perceive the universe as completely random. So that this is the reason why it's hard to answer that question, because there's so many different ways of perceiving what the universe is, that I'm not sure that narrowing it down to any one type of perception is going to cover the ballpark. It's just too big.
Well, Dean, only too soon we're out of time. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure having you.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Our guest this hour has been Chief Scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences and Professor of Integral and Transpersonal Psychology, Dean Radin. He's the author of The Conscious Universe, Entangled Minds, Supernormal, and Real Magic. His website, deanradin.com. Remember to join our email family to stay abreast of all the exciting new things we have coming up at missionevolution.org. This has been Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Join us next time as the mission continues to bring information, resources, and support to an evolving world.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Are you or is someone you know struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, relationships, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, grief, success, and prosperity? Do you know that your subconscious belief plays a big role in the outcome of your hard work? We can help you permanently change the beliefs that may be the reason for your struggles and failures. We care about getting you the return on your investment and the results you are looking for. We can help you be free of the limitations of your past and in realizing your highest potential. We work with people by phone and Skype. For more information, visit us at www.ritasoman.com. That's www.ritasoman.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.